There comes a time when a man has to sit in the silence of his own thoughts and wrestle with what he had and what he lost. See, people don't always recognize value when it's standing right in front of them. Comfort can make a man blind to the very thing he should be cherishing. And the truth is, absence has a way of opening his eyes. A man will enjoy the warmth of your presence, the way you pour into him, the way you show up for him. He'll get used to the sound of your encouragement, the steadiness of your support, the grace you extend when he falls short. But the problem with familiarity is that it breeds complacency. And when something is always there, always accessible, always pouring, he may start believing that it always will be. So one day, it isn't. See, absence is a teacher. It steps in and gives lessons that presence never could. It makes a man stop and wonder, where did that peace go? Why does everything feel off? And you'll start replaying moments in his mind, conversations that once felt ordinary, now carrying weight he didn't notice before. The way you smiled at him, the way you cared when he barely had the words to express himself. It's in the stillness of your absence that a man begins to realize just how much you meant to him. Sometimes a man has to experience life without you to understand what life with you really was. He needs to feel the difference. He needs to sit at a table where no one is asking how his day went. He needs to scroll through his phone and realize there are no good morning texts, no check-ins, no reminders that somebody out there was thinking about him. That void speaks louder than any words ever could. But hear me when I say this. Absence doesn't just reveal feelings, it reveals priorities, because when a man truly values you, when he truly sees who you are and what you bring, he won't just sit in his realization, he will act on it. He will move. He will reach out. He will shift something within himself to ensure he never has to feel that void again. And I know somebody is sitting here thinking, but if he really cared, why did it take my absence for him to see it? Oh, I hear you. And the answer is simple. Some men don't recognize peace until they live in chaos. Some men don't recognize warmth until they're standing in the cold. And some men don't realize they were being watered until they start to wither. It's not that he didn't care, it's that he didn't know how deeply he didn't know until he was forced to feel the difference. But listen to me. Absence is not a game, and it's not a strategy. This is not about stepping back to manipulate or to test somebody's love. No, no, no. This is about honoring yourself enough to remove your presence when it's no longer being valued. This is about saying, if you can't recognize what you have while I'm here, then you will have to recognize it when I'm gone. Because a high-value woman does not beg to be seen. She does not overstand where she is being overlooked. She does not remind a man of her worth. She lets her absence do the talking. And when she walks away, she doesn't slam the door in anger. She simply leaves it unlocked so that if that man wakes up and realizes what he lost, he has the choice to come back different, better, intentional. But hear me. If he comes back, it's not just with words. It's not just with apologies. It's with actions that reflect the lesson absence taught him. And if he doesn't come back, if he remains silent in your silence, then understand this. Absence didn't just reveal what you meant to him. It revealed what you never did. So don't be afraid to step back. Don't be afraid to reclaim your space, your energy, your presence. Because the man who truly sees your worth won't let your absence be the last chapter. He will do what it takes to write another one. See, something happens when a woman steps back. Something shifts in the atmosphere when she stops calling, stops reaching, stops pouring. A man may not notice it at first. He may even enjoy the space, thinking it gives him freedom, thinking it relieves pressure. But time has a way of revealing what the heart refuses to see in the moment. And eventually he'll come face to face with a truth that absence always exposes. Was I really ready to lose her? A man processes emotions differently. When everything is good, when the energy is steady, when the love is consistent, he doesn't always stop to examine how much he actually needs it. He's just living in the moment, moving through life, assuming that what's there today will be there tomorrow. But when that woman pulls back, when her voice no longer fills his days, when her presence is no longer woven into his routine, something starts to stir in his spirit. And he realizes that what he thought was ordinary was actually extraordinary. See, distance forces a man to confront emotions he didn't even know he had. It makes him question why he feels unsettled, why there's a void that wasn't there before. He thought he could just go on as usual, but something isn't sitting right in his soul. And as the days pass, as the silence stretches, as the absence grows heavier, he starts to understand that it wasn't just her presence that mattered. It was what her presence did to him. It brought peace, it brought stability, it brought a kind of comfort that he didn't recognize as rare until it was gone. Now let me tell you something. Emotions can lie dormant in a man for a long time. He can feel something deeply but not acknowledge it until life forces him to. And when a woman is always there, always available, always ready to give, he never has to tap into those emotions. He never has to sit in the reality of what she means to him. But when she steps away, when she removes that constant presence, he has no choice but to feel. And it is in that feeling, in that quiet, in that longing, that a man starts to understand the depth of what he had. But here's where it gets real. Absence not only makes a man feel, but it also forces him to decide. Because feeling something is one thing, but acting on it, that's another. See, there are men who will feel the loss. They will miss the energy. They will recognize the void, but they won't move. Not because they don't care, but because they aren't ready to do what it takes to keep something valuable. And that right there, that's where clarity comes. Because a man who is truly invested, a man who truly sees you as irreplaceable, won't just sit in his feelings, he will act on them. He will pick up that phone. He will step forward. He will shift something within himself because he knows that what he lost is worth fighting for. But let me warn you, some men will only miss you. They will never pursue you. They will feel the loss, but they will not do the work. And when that happens, don't let your emotions trick you into believing that missing you is enough. No, no, no. Missing you is not a strategy. Missing you is not effort. Missing you is not a foundation for a future. If a man truly understands what he had, if your absence truly showed him your value, then he will not sit in longing, he will move in intention. So hear me when I say this. You don't have to remind a man of your worth. You don't have to convince him to feel something. You don't have to explain what your presence meant. If he truly values you, if he truly wants you, then your absence will do the work for you. And if it doesn't, then you have your answer. Man will always respect what he fears losing. It's not the comfort of your presence that teaches him your value. It's the realization that you could walk away. See, some men don't appreciate consistency because they've never had to live without it. They take kindness for granted because it's been freely given. They assume love is an unlimited resource, something that will always be there no matter how they handle it. But life has a way of teaching lessons that words never could. And one of the hardest lessons a man will ever learn is that a woman who knows her worth will not stay where she is unappreciated. When something is always available, it's easy to overlook it. It's easy to assume it will always be there. A man will wake up every morning knowing she will call, knowing she will check in, knowing she will care, without ever stopping to ask himself what it would feel like if one day she didn't. Because when a woman gives consistently, when she pours endlessly, when she is always within reach, it creates the illusion that her love is unconditional. And while love itself may be unconditional, access is not. See, respect is born out of boundaries. A man respects what he knows is not guaranteed. He respects what he has to show up for. what he has to invest in, what he has to prove himself worthy of. But when he believes there are no consequences to his actions, when he believes he can be absent and still be chosen, when he believes he can neglect and still be loved, he does not change. He does not grow, because there is no urgency, no accountability, no realization that what he has is fragile and precious. That's why absence is so powerful, because when a woman steps back, when she removes herself from the equation, when she stops making herself so easily accessible, a man has to come face to face with his own choices. He has to ask himself, was I showing up the way I should have? Did I nurture what I had, or did I assume it would always be there? And that moment of reckoning is where true respect is born. Because now he has to decide whether he's willing to do the work to earn back what he once took for granted. But let me tell you something, this isn't about playing games. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about stepping back just to see if he will chase you. No, this is about self-respect. This is about recognizing that your presence is valuable, that your love is a gift, that your time and energy are not infinite resources to be given to someone who does not recognize their worth. Because when a man truly values you, when he truly understands that you are not something he can afford to lose, he will treat you accordingly. He won't wait until you leave to show up for you. He won't need your absence to remind him of your presence. If he does, if it takes your silence for him to hear you, if it takes your absence for him to see you, then you better make sure that when he comes back with changed behavior, not just regret. Because missing you is not enough. Wanting you is not enough. If he truly respects you, if he truly understands what he almost lost, then he won't just say it, he will show it. So don't be afraid to walk away when your presence is no longer valued. Don't be afraid to set a standard that demands respect, because the man who truly sees your worth won't let it take your absence to remind him of it. He will cherish you while you're there, not just when you're gone. A man can only understand the weight of something when he has to carry its absence. When a woman is always present, always available, always showing up, it's easy for him to believe that's just the way things are supposed to be. But the moment she removes herself, the moment she stops making the effort, the moment she stops filling in the spaces he never even knew were empty, reality hits him like a wave. See, men don't process emotions the way women do. A woman feels the shift immediately. The moment she senses neglect, the moment she realizes she's giving more than she's receiving, something in her spirit speaks. She knows when she's being taken for granted. But a man often doesn't realize what's happening in real time. He's moving through life assuming she'll always be there, assuming she'll always care, assuming she'll always care, assuming she'll always reach out. Until one day she doesn't. And that's when the shift happens. Because silence is powerful. A woman's silence will make a man reflect in a way her words never could. He may have ignored her concerns before. He may have brushed off her feelings, dismissed her needs, taken her patience for weakness. But when that patience runs out, when that grace is no longer extended, when she no longer argues, no longer explains, no longer fights for the connection, that silence will say everything she no longer needs to. A man will sit in that silence and start to notice things he once overlooked. He'll notice the absence of her check-ins, the missing warmth of her presence, the void where her encouragement used to be. He'll wake up in the morning and realize his phone isn't lighting up with her messages. He'll go through his day and feel the weight of her absence in the smallest ways. The way she used to remind him of important things. The way she made life feel a little easier, a little lighter, a little fuller. And suddenly, what once felt guaranteed no longer feels certain. But here's the truth. Some men will only understand your absence. They will never understand your presence. They will miss you, but they won't fight for you. They will feel the loss, but they won't change their ways. And that's why a woman must always pay attention, not just to a man's regret, but to his response. Because missing you is not the same as valuing you. feeling your absence is not the same as stepping up to honor your presence. See, absence is the test. It's the moment where a man has to make a decision. Does he let the silence remain, or does he break it? Does he sit in the loss, or does he do the work to correct what led to it? A man who truly values you, a man who truly understands what he had, won't just miss you. He'll move. He'll show up differently. He'll communicate differently. He'll make an effort, not just to get you back, but to keep you. But let me warn you, if a man can sit comfortably in your absence, if he can go days, weeks, even months without reaching out, without acknowledging the shift, without making an effort to reconnect, then that is your answer. A man who truly values you will not allow silence to be the last word. He will not risk losing something he knows is rare. He will not wait until it's too late to make things right. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where your absence goes unnoticed, where your silence is met with more silence, where the space you left behind remains unfilled, don't go back trying to remind him of what he lost, because the truth is, if he needed reminding, he never truly saw you in the first place. And a woman who knows her worth will never beg for a man to recognize it. A man will never truly understand the value of peace until he loses the woman who brought it into his life. See, some men are so used to chaos, so familiar with inconsistency, that when they meet a woman who brings stability, they don't recognize it as rare. They mistake her patience for passivity. They mistake her understanding for obligation. They assume that the way she loves, the way she nurtures, the way she cares is just how she is and not a choice she is making every single day. But the moment she removes that piece, the moment she stops filling in the gaps, the moment she steps away, that's when he realizes what he had. Because peace is not loud. Peace does not demand attention. Peace is something you feel, something that moves quietly through your life, something that makes everything else just a little bit lighter. And when a man has never experienced true peace before, he doesn't always recognize it while it's there. He may even take it for granted, assuming that the way she loves, the way she understands, the way she remains steady is something that will always be there. But the second she walks away, the second that peace is no longer present, everything changes. Suddenly, his world doesn't feel as steady. The little things he once overlooked now feel like heavy burdens. The calmness she brought, the way she made things easier, the way she reassured him with just her presence, is gone. And now he has to sit with the absence of something he never even knew he needed. That's the thing about peace. You don't always realize how much it matters until it's missing. A woman's peace is a sanctuary. It is a place where a man can rest, where he can exhale, where he can feel seen without having to perform. But when a man does not protect that peace, when he does not value it, when he assumes it will always be there, no matter how he shows up, he risks losing the very thing that made his life feel whole. And when it's gone, he will feel it in ways he never expected. See, absence does not just create longing, it creates clarity. When a woman steps back, when she stops giving, when she stops showing up in the way she always has, a man is forced to reflect. He has to ask himself, why does everything feel heavier? Why does my life feel different? And as the days go by, as the silence stretches, as the absence settles in, he realizes it wasn't just her presence that mattered, it was the peace she brought with it. But here's the reality. Not every man will know how to honor that peace. Some will feel the loss, but they won't change. They will miss the feeling of being cared for, but they won't step up to care in return. They will crave the calmness she brought, but they won't do the work to earn it back. And that is where a woman must be discerning. Because a man who truly understands what he lost won't just want it back, he will do what it takes to keep it. A woman's peace is a gift. It is not something to be played with, not something to be taken lightly, not something to be assumed. And the moment she realizes that a man does not know how to protect that peace, she must be willing to protect it for herself. Because a man who truly values her will never put her in a position where she has to choose between loving him and keeping her own peace intact. So if your absence does not wake him up, if your silence does not make him reflect, if your decision to step back does not inspire him to step forward, then you have your answer. Because a man who is truly ready for love will not just recognize your value when you leave, he will cherish it while you are still there. A man who truly sees your worth will not wait until you leave to acknowledge it. He won't take the risk of losing something he knows is rare. But some men don't learn until they're forced to. Some men don't realize what they had until they reach for it and find nothing there. Until the calls stop, until the messages go unanswered, until the space they once filled with indifference is now filled with silence. And suddenly they understand. Suddenly they feel the weight of what they ignored, what they dismissed, what they thought would always be there. See, a woman's presence is like oxygen. Necessary but unnoticed until it's gone. A man breathes it in every day, assuming it will always be there, assuming it requires nothing from him to sustain. But the moment she steps away, the moment she stops pouring, the moment she stops giving, he struggles. And it's in that struggle that the truth is revealed. Because some men, when they feel the absence, will do whatever it takes to fix what they broke. But others will only mourn the loss, never once considering what they could have done differently. That's why a woman must never measure a man's love by his regret. Regret is not love. A man can miss you and still not be ready for you. He can long for what you brought into his life and still not be willing to give you what you deserve. Because missing you is passive. It's an emotion. But fighting for you, that's action. That's a choice. That's the difference between a man who only realizes your worth when you're gone and a man who values you enough to never let you feel like leaving was your only option. A man who is truly ready for love, who is truly ready for you, will not wait until your absence teaches him what your presence should have. He will not make you prove your worth through your silence. He will not let the distance grow just to test if he cares. No, a man who understands what he has will protect it. He will nurture it. He will show up for it before it ever has the chance to slip away. But a man who only learns through loss, that's a man who is not yet prepared to love. That's a man who still thinks love is about ownership instead of partnership. That's a man who assumes presence means permanence, who believes that just because something is good, it will always be available. And a woman who knows her worth cannot afford to waste her time proving it to a man who refuses to see it. That's why a woman must always watch what a man does after she walks away. If his response is silence, if his response is more of the same, if his response is nothing but regret without change, then that's all she needs to know. Because a man who truly values her will not let regret be his final response. He will let his actions speak, not just his emotions. He will let his growth prove his love, not just his longing. And that's the difference between a man who is meant for you and a man who is only meant to teach you a lesson. The one who is meant for you will not wait until you leave to appreciate you. He will make sure that staying never feels like a mistake.